much for being here. Peggy and Ray have put together quite the program for us. So 4 years ago, if you would have told Captain Ray and Peggy that they would be married, 6 months later, they would have laughed. Yet, on June 30th, 2019, they became Mr. and Mrs. Captain aboard the Joseph L. Block. Okay, if you have not heard of the Block, you can go see it down the street. It's parked at Fincanterry for winter layup. They're the only couple where and I have to read this part because I get it wrong every time. The only couple where a working captain was married aboard his working ship on the Great Lakes. I know. Their lives have been quite an adventure since, and they are here today to share their story and some of their adventures. Okay, please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Peggy and Ray, Captain.
So much. And yes, if you would have told us 4 years ago that we were going to be married, we would have probably both looked at you like aliens. We really did not expect this to happen, did we, Ray?
No.
Now, Ray is a freighter captain. I have been a speaker and a presenter for years, so you will hear more from me, but Ray is my Vanna. Vanna Ray. So I just threw this in this morning. This is a picture that I took yesterday, and it looks like stacks of pancakes, but it's actually on the water or ice in Escanaba yesterday. And I looked it up last night. What these are caused by is methane gas being released from organic materials decomposing on the bottom of the lake. Wow. And when it gets cold, they form this. I've never seen this before. I've been on frozen ice or frozen clear ice before, but I've never seen this. And it was just so cool. So I had to share that with you. That was just yesterday. So this is Captain Ray. Right after graduating from the Great Lakes Maritime Academy back in 1976. Now his social security number is 8675309. Oh yeah. We covered that. You'll be singing that for the rest of the night, by the way. But he graduated from the Great Lakes Maritime Academy a year after the Edmund Fitzgerald went down, and he still chose this career. Kind of makes you wonder. However, that was me. I was a business owner. I'm from Escanaba. Ray is originally from Ludington, and he came from a maritime family. His dad worked on the Badger Car Ferry and on cement boats. I, however, grew up in Escanaba. I lived in southern Minnesota for many years, where I learned about farming. But I rode a Harley. I rode a motorcycle for about 40 years and never dreamed I'd be going on boats as much as I am now. But how we met, a lot of people ask. Now, this is the Joseph L. Block in Escanaba. And what happened was I was out on my boat one day and I was gone from my office, and Ray brought in his pennant from the International Shipmasters Association to my sign company, dropped it off with my employees. That was on a Friday. I came back in on Monday and I said, why did you guys take this in? I don't fix flags, I make them. And they said, well, it's for a guy's boat. You love boats. And I went, oh, boat, thinking boat, right? So I called him and I said, you know, I have a sewing machine at home. It's for a boat. I love boats. I'll fix your flag. And he said, okay. I said, I can't get it done till next week though. And he said, well, I'm going to be gone on the boat for a month, so that's fine. So where are you going? He said, Indiana Harbor. I said, what size boat do you have? And he said, well, I work on the Joseph L. Block. I work on the Joseph L. Block. So a month later, he came in to pick up the flag. And I handed him the flag, showed him what I had done to it, sewed it on my home sewing machine. And I said, what does it take to get a tour of that boat? And he said, well, you have to know someone who works on the boat. And I said, well, I do, and there's no charge for the flag. So a month later, Ray called. He was coming in very late to Escanaba. And he said, do you mind if it's going to be about 11 o'clock? And I said, no, that's fine. So about an hour later, he called and he said, this is Captain Sheldon from the Joseph L. Block. This guy's the captain. This guy's the captain. He said, we'll be there at about 11. Just bring your ID and you can come over. So a friend and I went over and we got a tour of the boat. Now, these pictures are a little fuzzy because this is from 2009. So those are the stairs, the ladder, whatever you want to call it, the boarding ladder that I went on. at 11 o'clock at night. And that was what the boat looked like, parked in Escanaba. And that is Captain Sheldon showing me the anchor chains in the windlass room in 2009. Such a handsome devil. But he was totally not on my radar. And while he was giving me the tour, I mean, we got underneath, and you'll see pictures of these things later, the engine room and the galley and everything. But he opened the door to the passenger quarters. And he said, we used to take executives from the company and from other vendors and things like that. He said, but now we take passengers now and then. And I went, how do you get a ride on this boat? And he said, you have to know the captain. And I said, I do know the captain. So being that he was busy and I was busy, it took many years before that would actually happen. And what precipitated that was in 2017, CN closed the ore dock in Escanaba. And that was kind of dangerous because that was the only place where they could move ore to efficiently by rail if something happened to the sulaks. So he wanted to show me the importance of that because that same year I got elected to the city council. Now, why on earth I ran for city council, I don't know, but obviously God had a plan. So he called me and he said, I really want you to take a ride on the boat. And that was in November. And I think by the time we got around to it, it was summer. And I couldn't find anyone to go with me, to be honest with you. So it took a long time, but that's Lynn Williams, that's Ray's hairdresser. And I did work for her husband. We were sitting at the fair one day and I talked about wanting to go on this boat. And she said, me too. And we found out it was the same one. That is trying on the, what are those called, Ray?
Gumby suits.
Well, the Gumby suits,
Oh,
yeah.
survival suits.
Survival suits. I am not that claustrophobic, but you put one of those babies on me with the lobster claws. Ooh, it was terrible. It was like, get me out of here. So that was us in the passenger quarters. And that was that same ladder. 9 years later, went up the ladder over and late at night, probably 1 o'clock in the morning over at Port Inland. And Lynn and I got on and took a really nice ride. Now that's actually the limestone loading the next morning at Port Inland. We got on the boat. We were expected to go to sleep, right? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. No, we stayed up all night roaming the boat. But this was in the morning when they were finishing the load. And you can see it down in the hold there. That is the navigation bridge, or commonly called the pilot house. And that was Ray up there with Kyle and Leonard. At that time would have been the second mate, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's where they drive the boat from, up in the pilot house. That is below deck. Now it's kind of hard to see because there's so many pipes and everything. But Ray, we're showing the stairs. So I'm up on the top of a set of stairs, and then there's the other stairs that go down. So it goes down and down and down into the boat. It is very warm down there. In the winter, it's glorious. In the summer, not so much. There's another view of the pilot house and the engines. Vanna.
The steering gear.
And there's the steering gear. See, he knows this stuff. He'll coach me on this. But, and that is the engine control room. So we've got the circuit breakers over here, the power supply, the control station, and the ballast pumping station. And that tells the water going into the ballast tanks, the water coming out of the ballast tanks, and what the status is on that. And the engineer usually sits over in this chair when they're not working on them. And there is the unloading tunnel. Ballast water feed line, if you can point to it, Ray, because I don't know if they can see that tight. And then the conveyor, the belt is over here. But he does such a good Vanna. He just needs a gown. No, please, no. So it's also useful in bad weather because back in the day on old freighters, they would have to put a cable along the deck and they would clamp onto it and be able to go from the bow to the stern. Now they can go completely underneath from the stern to the bow in bad weather. And that is the unloading conveyor belt. So that goes underneath and then it goes to that unloading boom and continues to bring the material off the boat. And on deck, so this is the port side looking toward the bow. So you've got your unloading boom there, but that is a wave deflector and a sea gate. And that sea gate door actually opens, but when it's closed,
When the sea gate is closed, it acts as a full wave deflector. So if is out in rough weather and waves are coming up on deck, it will hit this and deflect off over going all the way to the after cabin.
Okay, so this was our first port being on the boat after going down Lake Michigan. So it was pretty hazy that day. Nice hazy Chicago skyline. It was Labor Day weekend of 2018. And there's Indiana Harbor. And it's just cool looking from the pilot house. So this is the best place for pictures. There is a catwalk around that pilot house, and it is full of spiders. But I didn't care. Because if I got a camera in my hand and I'm up on a catwalk on a boat going down Lake Michigan, I don't care. Spiders can be all over me. I'll brush them off when I get in. So this is the view from up in the pilot house of the 7H hopper where they unload the iron ore. And now you're going to get to see Ray dock. So there's docking at dock 6, the limestone dock. Gets a little closer, and no pilot house recordings. I would always have to tell him if I was recording when I was in pilot house, Ray, I'm live. I'm live. Because he would be in the pilot house alone, other than me. So if the guys weren't doing exactly what he thought. So, and that is the captain's perspective. Now, his window would be right almost where he's standing right now. And then there's controls out on both wings as well. So he can control the boat from any one of those places. This is as they're starting to swing the boom out to begin unloading, and it happens remarkably fast. And then there it is, out and unloading already. And this fuel truck, they order these ahead, and that fuel, how many will it take, Ray? 3?
Yeah, it'll take 3 to 6 fuel trucks.
3 to 6 trucks.
And they usually will hold about 7,500 gallons.
7,500 gallons a piece. And that lasts
It'll last, we get up there about a week.
about a week. It is still far more efficient than rail or truck. The Lake Carriers has some information on their website that'll tell you the efficiency of that. And there's another unloading with some cool shadows. That's the photographer in me. So this is the steel mill. They are less than tidy, and you can get lost in them very easily. Just a couple pictures of the steel mill, and you can see, Ray, show them where the train car is. They're remote controlled train cars.
That's the engine.
And they pull these pots.
Ladle cars, they're hot
Yeah.
ladles. They're full of molten iron that are from the blast furnace, and they're taking them to the finishing mill.
Yeah, it's incredible. When it's really dark out and you see those flames coming out of those train cars, it's incredible. And this is a picture from the catwalk at night. Kind of cool. Notice how this one's a little different? Because that's under the radar. The first time I was on the boat, Ray let Lynn and I do anything. I mean, it was so fun. We had the run of that boat. We barely saw him the whole trip, but I don't know, one night there were planets aligning and we knew about it. And I said, well, you know, can we take my tripod and stuff up and go on top of the pilot house? Because there was a ladder. And he said, yeah. So we all went up there. Everyone in the crew was looking for us. And we came down and they're like, where were you guys? I said, under the radar. And they're like, yeah, we know. We couldn't find you. Where were you? Under the radar. And we really, truly were under the radar. And I got to be the wheelsman for 5 minutes. Len did too. We both got to be at the wheel.
You don't know, but in the background, I have my survival suit on.
He had the gumpy suit. Oh, so then after we got done at Indiana Harbor, we went up Lake Michigan and went under the mighty Mackinac Bridge and through the Straits. Very cool perspective. I mean, you can do it on tour boats over there, but going under on a freighter is really cool. Look how little those cars look. And that's from the side. And then we went to Port Dolomite. So that's over in Cedarville, Michigan. Now, see this perspective again? That is not with a drone. That's me. Again, hey, Ray, can I go out on the end of that? Yes. He did. He sent Bob out there with me. Bob Howard was out there with me, guarding me. I just had to put on gloves and a hard hat. I got to go out there. But yeah, look at that perspective. That's pretty cool. And there again is the Dolo, they call it, limestone. So then we went up the St. Mary's River. And on the river and at the docks, the captain is always at the front window. He's responsible for everything that happens to that boat always. But on the rivers and at the docks, he actually has to work.
Paid for that.
He worked his way up, but yeah, he did a lot of paperwork and he did a lot of work, but I always used to tease him that that's the only time he worked. But that is actually the fog that was going up the river the first time I went. And then it kind of opened up a little bit. And then the next minute it was that. So it's incredible how that fog lifts. But otherwise they're navigating all by instruments and by radar and AIS. So this is approaching the pole. And this has changed quite a bit. We were over there all summer, and I'll tell you some about that later, but this is starting to change. They're putting in they're finally putting in a new supersized lock, which is desperately needed. If this lock were to go down, there would be, I think they said 11 million jobs lost, and our economy would just go in the tank because we wouldn't have the supplies for steel making the way that it comes through now so efficiently. So there's approaching it, going a little closer. Now, they have to take some guys off to handle the lines. And this is how they do it. That is called a landing chair. Now, that is something he did not let me do. I begged, no joke. I begged, but I could not do that. So that's Bob getting up on the OSHA approved ladder on the right-hand side. And there he is again on the OSHA approved ladder. And he's getting ready to sit on that. And then this kind of a little video there. And there he is. Now they've changed a little since then. That was just with a single rope where they were wrapped around that. Now they actually have a safety harness attached to them. And then there we are in the lock. Now see in front of the bow, up towards the top there, where you can see how low you can see the whole gate. That's once they rise. It takes about 20 minutes to rise it. All the water comes from underneath the floor of the lock. They actually open up big tunnels. The tunnels down there, you could actually drive a vehicle through if you could get one down there. And they open up their gates in front of or tunnels in front of the gates where they open it. It lets a lot of water flow in and it raises the vessel right up. And then they just drive out the other side. We did that repeatedly this summer. So this is the upper limits of the St. Mary's River. This is Grove Cap Reef Light. It looks like a vehicle stuck out in the river. It's just the weirdest looking lighthouse, but it is Grove Cap Reef Light. And then we went by Whitefish Point, which was very cool. And there's Canada over on the side. Now that's, again, it was hazy because it was that time of year. Those hills are filled with wind turbines. So that's Canada's biggest wind turbine farm. But that boat there, I was wondering what it was when we were out there. So I went on marine traffic and lo and behold, it was the Clyde Minikabort. Our friend Mark Mather was driving that. But if you don't have marine traffic, when all the boats are coming in here, make sure you get it. It's an app. It's fun. Tells you everything. Right now, the status is there's a couple left, like going home to, I forgot his wife's name. Ashley. Yeah.
John J. Bola.
Home to Ashley. Ray once had home to my wife. Yeah. So here's another, as we were going across Lake Superior, another fog bank came in. And by the way, fog is an F word on a ship. And there it is. Now, when it's like this, they actually have someone on watch on the bow of that ship. And they're running that foghorn every 2 minutes. So it's a tedious job. And when it's cold, it's worse. And then it clears up. Instantly clears up. So this is what it looks like out there at night. It's just kind of cool, but you're just in total darkness. It's beautiful on moonlit nights or when it's starry, but otherwise you're in total darkness. And that is how they're navigating at that time because you can't see anything else. It's all done with electronic navigation now. Although Ray still use charts now and then. And he showed me how to do it.
Paper charts. We haven't done away with all of them, but
Yeah.
mostly it's all electronic charting.
And there we are going into Duluth. And this was the end of my ride. That's what people look like on the piers in Duluth from the boat. Look at the little hands.
Every day. they're out
And this
there.
was after Labor Day. So you can imagine what it's like when the kids are still out of school. And he was backing in. He showed me his skills backing in the boat. And there was Daryl. Now, I was not there on a Friday or a Saturday night. Saturday night is steak night. Ribeyes this thick on a grill, perfectly done with shrimp on the side. The food is incredible. And there, after I left, there's a nice boat butt, the Triggertha. We get a ride on that this summer, by the way. Oh, yeah. So that was the end of my ride. But in 2018 and 2019, Ray and I both had some big changes in our lives. Both of our spouses passed away. And we had been caretakers for a while. And like I said, Ray and I barely knew each other. But that changed. After his wife passed away, I gave him a devotional. I knew her daughter and I knew Ray. So his sisters called me and asked me to go have coffee with them.
I know nothing about this.
They interviewed me. And Ray was not on my radar. I was not on Ray's radar, but they asked me to go have coffee with them. And I went and had coffee with them a couple weeks later. And I brought a copy of the devotional.
A friend was over
And a
there.
friend of his was over at his house. And I brought lasagna and a devotional. And he called me and asked me if we could sit and have some coffee and talk about it. So we met at Starbucks and started having coffee. And several weeks after that, that would have been in late February, April 8th. I suppose in March, we started going to the gym together. That's what that was. Every couple of days, we went to the gym together. And again, we were just buddies. But I asked him to do this book with me, The 40-Day Prayer Challenge by Squire Rushnell. And you literally sit together, hold hands, and pray out loud. Now, if you don't think that's uncomfortable with someone that you barely know, it was interesting. But that started on April 8th. And on April 18th, something happened. And both of us just, wow, something happened. We couldn't figure it out. I had to go talk to my pastor. But shortly after that, he went back to work and we had lots of phone conversations. We talked on the phone like every day. And on May 5th, he called me to come over to the boat because he was in Port Inland. And he said, come on over and have lunch. And the boat got anchored out. So he brought the fast rescue boat to come and get me. Yeah. I'll show you how we got up for our wedding. You'll see how we got up to the boat from the fast rescue boat. So here's me. Yeah, sure. I'll go up and ride on the boat. And he asked me to marry him that day. And that was on May 5th. So go from the end of February, beginning of March to May 5th. And I said yes. And that's the first time we ever kissed. No joke. And then I went home and he went back to work. So we talked about getting married in December. We thought, this is moving a little fast. We got 6 kids between us and let's just figure out how we're going to do this. But he came home for a little while. We had a little in-person whirlwind dating. I picked him up in Duluth on May 17th. And during that time, we got a tour of the locks. That's down below the locks under the pole. He arranged that. And up in the control tower, that was kind of cool. We went out to Whitefish Point. That was his first time at Whitefish Point by land. And we saw a ship. What ship is that?
I'm going to be that. If somebody can, we have a gift. Great Republic. Well, give him the book.
Whoa, okay. We got something for you. The Great Republic. He identified that from there. How? I was amazed that he could do it close up, but you just did it from a distance. Okay, we also went to the Kena Island Light when Paul McCartney played at Lambeau. Oh yeah, best concert ever. We went to that. And we came to the Door County Maritime Museum. He had never been here. Did I just hear Andrew on the hallway wheel? Yes, we came here. We made it a point. He had never been to all these places, and I had been riding my Harley all over the place. And he also went to his first tractor show. Now, why would he go to a tractor show? I owned sign companies and gift stores. And one of the licenses that I work under is making decals for John Deere tractors. I've been doing it for almost 40 years. And I go to tractor shows, woo, all over the country. And it is fun. And Ray got to go to his first tractor show in Grand Island, Nebraska. So that was a blast. And then he went back to work June 16th. So we had this all planned. We had, went through classes with our pastor and did a lot of talking, and we thought, well, December sounds good. And then he called me a couple days later and he said, why are we waiting? And I said, I don't know. So he said, why don't you come over to the boat at the end of the month and we'll get married on the boat. So I had 2 weeks. I ordered a dress on Amazon. I ran over to my friend Sue's and bought a couple of rings. And I got his uniform dry cleaned and his hat cleaned. And he said June 29th, but because boat schedules are not schedules, June 29th turned into June 30th. But another boat got in ahead of him at the dock. And we had our pastor and his wife, my best friend and her husband, a photographer friend, and me waiting at the dock. So he did what he had to do. He launched the fast rescue boat. And that's how I got to my wedding too. So you can see him going out there. So it was anchored way out. Yeah, I'm a photographer too, by the way. And that is from the dock. Now I was already on the boat at that point, but that's some of the other wedding party. And that's the crane that lifts them up the 30 feet to the deck of the boat by a cable. Like that. And that's how I got to my wedding. So this was Captain Ray's entourage going up there from the stern to the bow. And then there's me with my best friend Renee and our pastor's wife. And then walking up the stairs to the bow. So you get to see our wedding pictures. It's aww. So there's our pastor and another view. And then this was the salute at the end, which I did not expect. It was a master salute. It was quite loud. But it was the most perfect day on the water. The temperature was perfect. There was no wind. We were anchored out there all day. I had to do the Titanic pose. He's the queen of the world. And he held me. And that's one of our photographer took this picture and he called it, "Hey, Skippy." He introduced us there because he was actually skipping down the deck. But that was how it looked from the back. We brought our pastor and his wife because they had children. We had to take them back in the fast rescue boat. And that's what it looked like that day from the water. Is that not absolutely stunning? But see the cable on the side? That was what they clamped the boat to bring it up and swing it over onto the deck. That's what the sunset looked like that day. We were meant to be. And then he brought the boat into the dock later on. After, which ship was it that was in there? The Manitowoc. I can never remember which one it was, the Mississauga or the Manitowoc or the Mishpacotton or the some M word. So the first in the fine cruise destinations, everyone else got off the ship but me. So my husband took me on a honeymoon cruise to beat all honeymoon cruises. We went to all the finest docks, ore docks, limestone crushing facilities, taconite. We went all over. But that was backing up to the Walter J. McCarthy.
In the dry dock right now, I think.
Yeah. And then we left there and went north and went through the locks again. Now, keep in mind, this is 9 years later after my first ride. Or no, not 9 years after my first ride. It was less than a year after my first ride, 9 years after we met. Isn't that pretty? I just had to throw that in there because of the reflection on the water that was passing the Ghat, right? Yeah, yep. The Ghat. But again, the F word. This is at Two Harbors, Minnesota. Could not see a thing. Look at that. Isn't that cool, that inversion layer? And right up to the dock there. And then it cleared up. Once again. Yeah, look at the little rainbow there. Yeah. Then we left again. Just some of these shots that I could get and back through the locks. And I just had to share that one because I love the red, white, and blue on the locks at night. It's so pretty. And back down to Indiana Harbor. This one just shows Ray's docking skills a little more because you can see the dock on the side and the fuel truck's there again. If it's not a fuel truck, it's another truck to pump it. They're either putting fuel in or pumping stuff out. But now this time we had to get off a different way. That's why I'm showing this with the stairs there. So that's going down by the engine room and that's coming out the side of the boat. And then there's a, what do you call those, Ray?
What?
The walkway thing.
This gangway?
Gangway, that's what it's called.
This little thing?
I like taking pictures, but I don't know all the terminology, right? So, and those are the tubes that they pump the other stuff. I think there's fuel coming in and something else going out. But if you look as the ship's going by and you see that, sometimes they'll be looking out the window and things on the side. Otherwise, there's this door as well. So on that trip, we decided to fix cake for the crew. So we were down cooking in the galley, but I did this to show you the galley. This is the serving area where they eat. There is food there 24 hours a day. I gained 30 pounds the first year that Ray and I were married because I was riding with them. There are unlimited Oreos. If the package empties, another one magically disappears or magically appears. Yeah, I have a propensity. I love Oreos. But it's all hot food there. And then they have salads and desserts over here. And then more desserts on yet another counter, the homemade donuts. And then that's the food prep area. It's actually much larger than it looks there. But freezers and refrigerators and pantries, and there's just food upon food. It's a very important thing that they keep the sailors happy with food. And if you don't like what they're eating, then you get either a cold meat sandwich out of the refrigerator or DiGiorno pizzas that are there with a pizza oven 24 hours a day as well. So this was a cool storm that was going across Lake Michigan when I was riding. And this is the point where a couple of the guys said, "Peggy, get in here." And then it poured like crazy. It was super windy. You ever get the idea of a little adventurous? Peggy, get in here. And then it got like that shortly after. A good splash. So little did I know, I'm going to show you yet another boarding method. I rode with Ray a lot that year. And one of the first questions we got was, how do you get permission to get married aboard a freighter? You don't, you just do it. Nobody knew. We didn't even know that you had to ask. So, but I rode with him a lot that first year. So if you look on the left-hand side here, that is called the grocery basket. That's how they bring supplies up to the ship at port. Well, we were in Lorain, Ohio, and it's called the Jonick Dock, and it's not exactly the easiest dock to board. And as they're loading, they have to keep shifting the boat. So if you can see in that picture on the right, Ray, point to where you are. That's Ray in the grocery basket. That's how I got up there too. And it's on a crane. It's just a cable. And we got up to the boat. But then to get off the boat the next day, they had shifted it. So see that little OSHA-approved ladder with the rail? And see, it's not Eldon, it's Eldon's brother, Daryl, going down the ladder. Here's from the top. I believe that's when I looked at Daryl, who I graduated from high school with, and I went, I am 59 years old at the time. What am I doing this for? And I climbed down it so that we could go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we spent the day at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So yeah, I got off it. But then when we came back, they had once again shifted the boat. See the ladder up on the front? That's how we got back on. Then after that, we went through Detroit, and the J.W. Westcott, the mail boat. They'll bring mail, supplies, newspapers, things like that. I think they brought us some newspapers.
And
yeah,
they have been known to deliver pizzas.
Yeah, and it's known as mail by the pail. So and they do. They just lower a pail down to them, and they put things in it, and then it comes back up. And oh, I lost the picture of them going away. Oh, I must have taken it off. Okay. So, and this is the Ambassador Bridge going from Detroit to Windsor. That particular trip, I got to ride like 4 of the Great Lakes. So this was really cool. And go by Detroit. Went up Lake Huron. Again, that was a sporty little ride. This was in November. So it would have been, yep, because it was Thanksgiving. There's the Thanksgiving feast. I thought I'd give you some food shots. This was the appetizers. Super. Yeah. The banana dolphins were a big thing. And oh yeah, just everything you can imagine. I didn't even put all the pictures up. Yep, unlimited crab legs, and I think there was steak and lobster involved on that meal as well. Ham, turkey, every kind of dessert. And I mean, those are all homemade pies. They don't buy frozen stuff. It's all homemade cookies, pies, donuts. Yeah. And then we went up through the Sulaks. Now this is where it gets fun. I didn't know this was going to be my last ride. In fact, I didn't even plan on going on that ride. I bought the ticket to go to Cleveland 2 days before I hopped on a plane and went there to take this ride. But I wanted to spend Thanksgiving with them. So we went into the Sulaks, and as we were leaving the locks, oh, there we go. As we were leaving the locks, we got a call from the engine room, and it was Joyce, the engineer, and she said, Ray, we lost an engine. We lost a bearing on the engine, and we don't have a replacement part. Now we're going onto Lake Superior into a nor'easter. They had 2 feet of snow forecast in Duluth, and winds, and a storm, and we had 1 engine. So now normally a boat would go up to the North Shore for that and get in the lee of the wind, but we had 1 engine. So all of us in the pilot house, I think there were like 5 of us, were silent. We just sat there, and Ray, looking at the radar, back and forth. And finally he said, we're going to go anchor at Whitefish. Nor'easter at Lake Superior, Whitefish. Anyone hear Gordon Lightfoot singing right now? Yeah. So that's where we went, but it was very safe. So we anchored at Whitefish for 2.5 days, waiting for this storm to go by. Then went up to the North Shore. It was very cold, very clear, very beautiful. But we went up to the North Shore and went across and got to Duluth, where the Duluth aerial lift bridge was frozen in the down position. And we anchored at Duluth for 2.5 days. It was beautiful. You could see all the lights at night. You could see Bentleyville lit up. It was gorgeous. But we couldn't get on land. We were on that boat for a long time. But finally we were able to get there. That was another shot of during the day. Kind of fuzzy, but there was a salty out there that I think was getting some assistance. But then we actually went into the Superior entry. The reason we couldn't do it before though was that all the boats were backed up at the docks. So we had to wait. So we got into Superior, and I loaded up the truck with Ray's winter gear. See the grocery basket down there, lowered it. And I went home, and he went back, and there he is going back to work. I almost get teary-eyed watching this because that's the picture I took of him going back, like going, I gotta go home. And then he went into layup at Sturgeon Bay. So I came down, I came down, and this is from the Sykes. I took a picture of the block from the Sykes. I was able to take a picture, what Benega Ford boat were they building at that time? A new barge.
Oh, the Great Lakes Traders. No, the Erie Trader.
Erie Trader. Okay. Yeah, it was right next to it too. So it was really cool because we could see that. Then we spent winter break. Florida and Jamaica, honeymoon number 226. Yeah, that was kind of fun. Boats, you can see boats were involved. Then he had bid out of 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. I couldn't get anywhere near that darn boat. We didn't know that my last ride in 2019 would be my last ride. And so I had to drop him off, but it was fun still to come in. I could drive in, but I just couldn't get out of the truck. So we started prepping for retirement. So that is our boat. I didn't realize you had a beer in your hand. Oops, I should have photoshopped that baby out. So anyway, we named our boat Captain's Adventure. And this was here in Sturgeon, or no, this was in Menominee when we lettered it. But we decided to start prepping. Now this is in Sturgeon Bay. We came through on our boat. I just like the Sykes because Ray was captain of the Sykes before the block. And the Michigan Trader, there we go. And that's really pretty. That's from Center Point stock. So in 2020, what I did was chase the boat. So after you could find, I had a letter from Homeland Security since I was married to a captain. So I could drive, I could go places. So I would pack picnics. And whenever I couldn't go on the boat, but when he docked the boat, I could pick him up and we could go do things. So we would go to lighthouses and beaches. We saw more of the Great Lakes region during that time. It was amazing. I recommend it to everyone. Just get in your vehicle. We put 38,000 miles on a brand new pickup in 18 months. I was chasing him everywhere. He would get to one dock and I'd pick him up as soon as he got there. He didn't have to be there while they were loading the boat. We would go everywhere around and then I would come back and drop him off, go home, do some laundry, go to the next one. I mean, we went everywhere. It was so fun. But this is going under the Blotnick Bridge in Duluth. Yeah, so, and that was up in Two Harbors. That says he was coming into Two Harbors. It was really cold. I was out on the pier. Like this was January 10th of 2021. I picked him up and we went up to Split Rock in January, and it was gorgeous. No one was there, and no one was anywhere during this time. We had everything to ourselves. So winter break in 2020. We were gonna fly to Arizona and we couldn't because of COVID. Everybody, was encouraging us to stay around. So instead we went to Two Harbors, Grand Marais, and Marquette. And that was fun too. This was up at Two Harbors. There was sea smoke like you can't believe because it was a 50 below wind chill. And Ray was still coming outside with me a little bit. I'd wake him up in the morning. Come on, there's sea smoke. Let me sleep. So fit out March of 2021 was the last one. And Ray didn't really expect to do that. He was actually going to retire and just take vacation out until March 31st. But the captain who replaced him, his former first mate, Tom Garvey, his wife passed away. So the first mate, the new first mate, who was Ray's second mate, John Olson, was going to have to take the boat out for the first time, and he had never done that. And we talked to him, congratulated him, and he sounded just a little tense, not horrified, but on the border. And he had to do all the Coast Guard inspections. And John's a great guy, and he's very, very capable. But he just sounded like, geez, oh man, I'm doing this without any planning. So I said, Ray, why don't you go and just be there with John while he takes the boat out for the first time, even though I really didn't want him to go anywhere. So, and plus it was nice for him to be able to do this. So this was his last fit out. And again, I couldn't go anywhere near the boat. So there he is getting on there. I took pictures just like last day of school. Here's my Ray going up the ladder. So what happened during that was I was going to go take pictures from Bullhead Point. And then I was driving over the bridge and I saw the starter tugs. And I thought, I wonder what it would take to get on those tugs. And I made a couple phone calls, and 15 minutes later, Steve Ross said, come on over, you can go on with me. So I got on the tugs. So I'm actually taking pictures there from the tugs as he took Ray out. So it was pretty cool perspective. First time I had ever been on a tugboat. Not the last though. So here's, I was on the side of the tug as they were pushing along there. And then I said, see you in Two Harbors, because that's where he was going to get off. He was going to get off in the Sioux. And then I said, just, go have a good time. Take it through locks one more time. Take it to Two Harbors. Maybe not. Maybe I'll see you in the Sioux. Because I called him when I was home, because I got home. And I called him and I said, I really should have done like a congratulations retirement banner. I own a sign shop, Silence on the other end of the phone. Ray, you want a banner? Well, yeah. So I had a 4 foot by 8 foot banner and just happened to have the pole pockets in the right place, everything. And then I threw it out on Facebook for people to come sign it. So we had a whole bunch of people come sign it, but this was his last time through the lock on the block. We actually live streamed it. Tons of people watched it. There he is up on the wing. And there he is, and there's the banner. And his sister came up. This is his sister, who's the same age as I am, Marie. She actually drove up from Traverse City and was there with me. And it was really nice because on the way over there, I was just going to hold the banner outside the fence. And then I called Ray and I said, hey, Ray, give me his number at the locks. I said, hey, Aaron, I've got a twit card. I've got a hard hat. Can I come in? Yes. So we got to go in, and then the guys held the banner for us. So that was kind of cool. And then we went up to Two Harbors. And again, this was still COVID time, right? So as I was getting up to Two Harbors the night before, I went home, did laundry, got on the road again. As I was getting up to Two Harbors, I said, it was at night, and I said, hey, Ray, give me the name of a couple people at the Two Harbors dock. So I called and I said, hey, this is the story. My husband's coming in for the last time. Can I go in and take pictures on the dock? I have a twit card. I'm all legit, And the guy goes, yeah, I don't see any problem with that. And I said, okay, I'll come tomorrow morning when he gets in. But I said, what's your name? And he said, well, my name is Scott, but they call me Yoop. And I'm like, why do they call you Yoop, Scott? He goes, well, I'm from the UP of Michigan. And I said, where? And he said, Escanaba. And I said, Scott, so am I. Turns out my daughter and his niece were really good friends in high school. She was at our house all the time. So anyway, he got me in, and I was able to go to the top of the ship loader and video this. And what we did was, if you go back, let's see, it was on the blog page. I did it from the blog page and you did it from yours. I had his mate, he docked it for the last time. And John, who was the captain at the time, FaceTime lived it from the boat. And I FaceTime lived it from the top of the loader. It was spectacular. It was so cool. And they actually had a little glitch with the boat that he had to take care of. And it was cool for people to be able to watch that. So he came in and there he is. He's a little teary-eyed in that picture on the left because they gave him a big salute as he was walking through. I get teary-eyed when I think of this. But also what I arranged to do then was I asked Scott, hey, Ray's never gotten a tour of the ship loader. Can we? You guys get the idea that I ask a lot. So he did. He gave him a tour of the top of the ship loader, which is really cool. Now the other thing, see this right here? That's a telephone booth that's still there. Isn't that cool? That's how the guys used to have to call home before cell phones. They'd have to stand in line underneath that ore dock and make phone calls. So again, this is from the top of the loader, and that's in where the computers are, where they tell which gate to do what to load the ship. You can show them something?
No.
Oh, okay. You can say something, right? I'm sorry. At home, I let him talk. So that's the ship loading. And then it was retirement on our boat. That's playing around with the Sykes over by Cedarville one day, or by Port Inland. Yeah, that's, in fact, it was where we got married. They were doing some stuff with their thrusters and we were on our boat. But maybe it's not time for retirement. Because this is an LCS, a littoral combat ship that's being worked on in Escanaba. And Ray got called to do some tug work. So Nick had us come out and just ride on the tug while they were bringing this in. In fact, it was, Rob, were you in on that tow? The Minneapolis, St. Paul going into Escanaba? Or maybe it was Cooperstown. Okay. But anyway, we brought these, it was Sartor and Kabasic, North Shore Marine that brought it in. And then, okay, so that was one day. The next day we were up in Marquette having dinner with my son, and I was looking at my phone and I saw that the Gainer was in Menominee. So I texted Steve, so you guys doing that boat launch tomorrow in Menominee or Marinette? And he said, yeah. And I said, need help? I'm shy. And he said, yeah, come on down. So we got to come down and we were here for that, or we were in, oh, I spelled Marinette wrong. Marinade, auto-correct, and I didn't see it. But that's how it looks before they get launched, and that is after it slid in. We were on the tug that was on the bow. Yeah, look at ding, 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 ding. Oops. Let me go back. There we go. So yeah, that's what it looks like when it got launched. And then he got another call from Steve, and I didn't get to go on this one because my mom was sick and it was a long tow and there were a lot of bunks. So they took the Coast Guard boats for the service life extension. So you guys went what to, were you in on that one, Ron?
We went down to Ohio.
Okay, down to Ohio, got one of the boats, then went to Houghton and picked up another one. I did get to ride to go pick that up in Houghton. And then they towed them to Superior. So Ray got to go on that. And then in November, took the Badger, went over and got the Badger in Ludington, brought a barge over. That one we were with Rob. And I got to go too, because at one point, Steve wanted Ray to come and work. And he said, well, Peggy can come along. And Steve said, well, why doesn't she just get her Merchant Mariner credential and we can pay her too? So at 59 years old, I got my legit Merchant Mariner credential. I didn't want to get paid, but I got to go. So we went over and got the Badger, and there's the sleeping quarters. It's amazing sleeping on a tug or a boat of any sort. That's me reading my book up there. There's the cabin. Tight quarters, but comfortable quarters. This is towing we are on the stern, and that's going into the Sturgeon Bay Shipping Canal. And there it is at the dock. And then there's another moving the Callaway around. These are just some random pictures in Sturgeon Bay here. There's the Badger again. Breaking ice for the first time. Rob, raise your hand. I was with Rob. Ray wasn't even on the boat. This was the coolest experience ever. It was absolutely cool. Until I realized that when we were out there breaking ice, we're breaking ice for the Marianne Market for Miller Boat Line over in Put in Bay. And I realized that, like, if something happens, we're the ones that go out and rescue people. I trusted Rob though. And then they would go out and say, you're released to go back. And then they'd call back 15 minutes later and say, we need you again, right, Rob? So there it is. And then there was us moving the Badger around again. Again, Ray was on another boat. I was on with Rob. Rob was my captain. There's pulling the Badger out. The Alpina's there behind it because it was in dry dock with the Alpina. And then again, the Alpina and moving some other boats around. And there's Ray up on the nose there. I am going to, okay, we're 12 minutes from being an hour, and the max I will go on this is an hour. I prepared a whole bunch, and we're going to take you up through when we can. But you will not be here longer than an hour. Okay, so there's the Badger again, going back. There it is in Ludington. I'm going to buzz through these pretty quick. Moving some more boats. That's what the ice looks like on some of those boats coming in. There's on the Clyde. Moving the Mesabi Minor into dry dock last year. Moving it around. Isn't that cool? The reflection. Moving the Sykes. And there's just everyone tucked in for the winter. So we also did some work with Minneapolis St. Paul, and I'm watching my time here. This was the LCS Minneapolis St. Paul that was in Escanaba for repair again. And Ray got called to take the boat out for sea trials because they needed a captain now, and we live 2 blocks from the dock. So I said, I want to get on there. And Nick said, well, you can get into the dock. I don't know if you can get on the ship. But when we got there, no one was standing at the gate. I mean, they let us in the gate, but no one was standing at the stairs. So I flashed my credential, and they thought they had 2 captains. And by the time they figured out they only had 1, it was too late. So I got to ride out with them. That's with the captain. And Ray was the pilot. And then see this door here? They were going to take us out that door, and we were going to step easily onto the tug. Well, if we would have done that, they would have crushed the hydraulic door on the side of the boat. So they said, well, we're going to take you up to the flight deck, and you guys are going to have to go down the pilot's ladder. So that's how we got off the boat. Yet another exciting offboarding. But then Ray, when he went back out to bring it back in, they wouldn't let me go because they had to take him up the side of the ship on a rib. So I couldn't go to that one, but I did get to go out on the tug and take some pictures. So back at the dock, and until we meet them at the Sioux. And this is what we did after that. They asked if we could work a day or 2 on the Sulaks boat tours this summer, him a captain, me as a narrator and deckhand. Turned into 5 days a week, 3 trips a day, all summer for 5 months. Yeah, they couldn't find captains. So we ended up working, and so there's Ray going through the locks. We lived on our boat in the Kemp Marina. They didn't have any housing over there because of the locks project. So, but look at the view. That's the Valley Camp, the museum ship over there. That was out our back. And then we stayed at our boss's cabin when it was beginning of the season and the end. That's the view from the cabin. That's the sunrise from the cabin. Life was rough. But we spent the summer just boats in and out. There's a Stuart J. Court. This one's an interesting one. See the Stuart J. Court coming out? Ray kind of misjudged.
Oh,
Okay.
we planned it the whole way.
We planned it the whole way. We were really, really close. We were really cozy. Like we had a couple feet. He was messaging the captain. Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I got in a little close there. We did have the Joseph L. Black's grandchildren and their spouses. So next to Ray and next to me, those are his grandchildren and their spouses. And they came and rode with us this summer. And we got them a signed life ring from all the crew members on the Joseph L. Black. It was very cool. That's the Canadian lock. So is it now time for retirement? We've done tugs, ice breaking, tour boats, Navy boats, tractor decals, and professional adventuring. But our upcoming adventures, in 2 weeks, we leave for Hawaii for 2 weeks. We're going a back-to-back Venice to Rome and Rome to Tampa transatlantic cruise, 25 days with 2 weeks or a week in Italy before that. And this summer, we are not working. Our boat is going to hit hopefully all the Great Lakes. We're going to try and get up to Montreal on our boat, on our motor yacht, Mr. and Mrs. Captain's Adventure. And also, I have an agent now to do speaking on cruise ships for destination and enrichment. So we hope to be doing both Great Lakes and cruises all around. If you want to follow us or see us, here's our information. Mr. and Mrs. Captain's Adventures. This will all be on their Facebook page, so you can take a look at it.
We really love Peggy.
But I do encourage you all. Okay, so you're here tonight with this series, and you've probably come to others, or you'd like to come to others. Membership is very, very reasonable.
We did not
to
pay her
support
to
this
say this.
organization. She doesn't. But Ray and I belong to, we probably belong to 10 or 12 maritime museums. We like to support these organizations because they keep the history alive and they keep things like this alive where we can share our stories with you. We hope to come back next year if they'll have us. And
No, I don't think so.
We'll give you some more insight into the ships and things like that. This just scratches the surface, of what we have. I had some extra little, this is my little guy, my little Y. We're going to Minnesota tomorrow to see him. But we have, we forget things over there. Port Dolomite again. This is, these are just Roger LeLever. We went to the Tall Ships Festival in Two Harbors. We toured that boat. There's Ray on ours. We have so many pictures and so many experiences to share with people. But please join the organization. Pay for it. You get free admission in here, and I think you get 10% off in the gift store.
Lori?
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah. So there are a lot of benefits, but the biggest benefit is saving the history for young people like this who love boats, and being able to save artifacts and history so that everyone can know how important shipping is to our country. So I thank you all again for being here. And Mr. Captain, would you like to say something?
Does anybody have a question?
Yeah, we can answer some questions. We have some time as long as you're willing to be here. Does anyone have questions for Ray? He can talk. How many sailors were on the ship with him?
There was a total crew of 22, including myself. Captain, 3 mates, chief engineer, 3 engineers, and then you had unlicensed crew members. And there was always all that food that was prepared, the 2-person galley.
From when you started in '76 to when you retired, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the shipping industry?
Yes, what are the biggest changes that he's seen in the shipping industry from 1976 until he retired in March of 2021?
From my Well, I always went by the saying is I want to be the old captain, not the bold captain. So I would try to avoid the storms and with improved forecasting, we were able to do that. Where coming north or south on Lake Michigan, if there was a northwest, west or southwest winds, we would come up the Wisconsin shoreline. Anything out of the east, we would hug the Michigan shoreline. Again, up on Lake Superior, if it was depending on what direction, if it was anything out of the south, well, you could come around Whitefish and kind of hug the shoreline until you got up to the Keweenaw and kind of just keep hugging it around.
Okay, so funniest story of Ray being out on the lake when I was home. There was one storm that was really coming in and most of the boats were tucking away and I could watch him on AIS. I could track him, right? We were talking on the phone and I said, Ray, all the other boats are tucking in. Are you going to go and hide out somewhere? He was coming up Lake Michigan. And he said, no, I think I'm going to get to Port Inland. And I watched a little while later and like everyone was off. I couldn't see any other boats on AIS. And I said, Ray, come on, there's nobody else out there. I'm just going to go back behind Washington Island. And he said, I said, you're the only one out there. He goes, Peggy, I'm not the only one out here. The Anderson's right behind me. Yeah. Now, for those that don't know, the Anderson was the one behind the Edmund Fitzgerald. Yeah. Okay.
And coming up through the ranks, some of the captains that I sailed under, they would all have the same saying of, well, we're just going to go stick our nose out in it. And that always struck me as being odd because, well, if the bow goes out, the stern's going to follow it. So we're going to be out in it. But I was never in any situation where I was fearful of anything. So I'm thankful for all the crew that I'd sailed with and the captains that I came up under and mentored with, or under, I should say. I learned my lesson.
And this year we also had the honor of going up to Whitefish Point and ringing the bell. Ray rang for Captain. Every time I say it, I get choked up. Ray rang for Captain McSorley, and I rang for another crew member. It was incredible to actually touch that bell that was down at the bottom. Okay, what's your question?
I'm just wondering how you ended up as a sailor.
How he ended up as a sailor.
Presentation.
Born and raised in Ludington. My dad at that time sailed on the car ferries out of Ludington, came to Manitowoc, Kewanee, and Milwaukee. And then I also read books called Shipwrecks and Survivals, Ghost Ships, and different stuff like that. And actually, it was a high school guidance counselor that told me about the Great Lakes Maritime Academy in Traverse City. And it was part of the Northwestern Michigan College, so it was a 2-year school, but with the maritime classes, it actually was over 3 years. So it was just how I ended up going.
Okay.
What's the typical schedule for the ship for the year? How many trips do you take out? How long are they?
What is a typical schedule for the boat for a year? How many trips do you take?
A typical schedule, I will just say for the Joseph L. Block, they would probably average around 65, 70 trips a year. Now, a trip would be considered going from a unload dock to a loading dock back to an unload dock. That would be a round trip. So we would take on a summer trip, we would go from Indiana Harbor to Port Inland, take a partial load of stone there, go over to Port Dolomite, pick up another partial load of stone, take that to Duluth. So that would be considered a trip where it goes one. And then if we were done offloading that, we would either stay in Duluth or maybe go to Superior or two harbors and pick up a load of iron ore or some product there, and then bring that back down to Indiana Harbor. So a usual trip, a full round trip going from Indiana Harbor to Duluth and back down would take about 6 to 7 days. And so that's how they can average them. Now in December, I was told by one of the crew members on the Joseph L. Block, in December, I think they made 3 trips total. And it was all because of weather delays and traffic delays of boats at other docks.
Does the whole shipping industry have issues like every other employment or, you know?
I can finish your question before you finish answering. She asked if the whole shipping industry has the same issues as every other industry right now with people. Pretty much, yes.
Yeah,
They're
very much.
paying, in fact, if he were to be able to refer mates or ABs or whatever, you get $1,000 if they get hired or something. I mean, it's crazy. It's like everyone else. This summer, when we got asked to, it actually started as a joke. Bob Shallop, who went back to manage the original Sulak boat tours for Interlake, bought the original Sulak boat tours from the Welch family, who had had it since 1934. And then Steve Welch was going to be there for a number of years, and he passed away in January. So Bob, who used to manage it, came back, and we're friends, and we were talking to him one day, and he said, "Hey, Ray, you want to come back to work? I need captains for the original Sulak's boat tours this summer." And he didn't know it, but Ray had gone out of the room, and I said, "Do you need narrators too?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, we'll do it." And then Ray came back in the room, and I said, "Hey, Ray, you want to do this?" And he said, "Well, you can work 2 or 3 days a week, you know, whatever you want." And he said, "There's no housing over here." And I said, "Well, we have a boat, you have a marina, so we'll come over." And then we would just go from there, not knowing that we would be working that much. But when we went there the first time, and Mark Barker and some other people from Interlake were there, he was trying to recruit him to run the Badger. And I was like, "I can call Badger bingo." Yeah, that sounds like fun. But there's a different way of docking the Badger, and it's a lot more work, and it's 24-hour shifts for 3-4 days in a row. So he didn't want to do it. So B34. Okay, there was someone over here with a question. Oh, what's coming in from Lake Michigan versus coming in through the bay? Ice.
Well, I think you might have seen the Undaunted in their barge, the Pier Marquette 41. They may have gone through here. It's more or less just a restriction by depth of the water or the drafts that of going through here, over going up and around into through Death Door Pass or Port de Morse if the boat was going down to Green Bay. Because I have taken cargo from South Chicago to Green Bay. In fact, that was my very first trip as a captain, was on the Wilfred Sykes doing that. I remember it very well. But yeah, it's just for vessels to transit through here, you have to be at a quite shallow draft.
I have a question. How different is the block versus the sites in terms of like literally everything? Layout, operation, how it drives, how to park
How
it?
different is the block from the sites? How it drives, everything.
About 26 years now.
Oh, fair.
The Wilfred Sykes, everyone, I'm sure we have people who all know, is the conventional built where the pilot house is forward and the cabin is aft, and you have that long deck in between. And then in the 70s, they started the new building session or series, and where all the cabin was aft, you had that big round bow. So if you're in ice, a boat that has that pointed bow and that pilot house forward goes through ice a lot better than something with that round bow. Because again, when you hit ice in those with a round bow thing, you might want to go ahead, but the ice is going to take you that way, you know, and it's harder to steer off. The other difference is a steamer, you have the engine order telegraph, which is also affectionately known as the chadburn, that the captain has to ring to maneuver the ship, and then an engineer in the after end has to answer that chadburn and then turn valves and this one to get the RPMs and stuff that you want. Whereas on the new builds, they're diesel, and I have the pitch control wheel right there in the pilot house. So any maneuvering that I want to do, I can do it right from there, you know, head, astern, whatever. And the rudder controls, wheelsman at the wheel stand, and then I have a bow and stern thruster controls on the Joseph L. block, whereas on the Wilfred Sykes, it only had the bow thruster. Now, because I came up on, trained on the Sykes first, some of the docks we had to make, I had to make stern first. So I'm always looking back and looking over everything. And the guys always told me that on the Sykes that I could make a dock better backing in than I did heading in. I don't know the difference, but I don't know. But then again, because then switching over to the Joe Block, I had more controls, but then I also had that long deck right out in front of me. So I was like, oh, it's just like backing in on the Sykes.
One thing we didn't cover is that Ray worked for the same fleet for 44 and a half years. So he started with Inland Steel, and then it was, let's see, Inland Steel, Inland, ISPAT,
Mitchell, yeah. then
Archler Middle,
and then
but he
Cleveland.
retired from Cleveland Cliffs. They bought it in January, he retired in March. So he worked for all those different companies and never left the fleet. Yes. They are looking at a lot of different things. They're looking to go to like green energy. In fact, Mark Barker did a presentation today. You can probably look, it's on the Corps of Engineers site. He actually did a whole presentation on that. I got to watch part of it today. He did a live stream. Yeah, yeah, they did. And I will tell you that Interlake is a very, very green company. They are very, very concerned about energy efficiency and keeping things clean. Extremely. Mark Barker is a forerunner on that. He is absolutely adamant about it.
They have repowered their lake vessel fleet of the 1,000-footers, the K Barker, the Lea Tagurtha, and I'm trying to think what other ones, but they are to the higher standards of the tier 3 and tier 4 levels. And then they've converted so that the steam that you see coming out of those stacks is not exhaust. It's not diesel exhaust. It's pretty much steam.
Yeah, if you can, if you're interested in that, just check out the Corps of Engineers site because they did an interview with them at 12:30 today. And it was very good. And that's what it focused on. A lot of it. Is there anyone else?
Okay, we'll do two
Yeah,
more questions.
I was gonna say one or two more
Yeah,
questions.
all right, last two.
Okay.
To work for that same company, did you ever ride on the Ryerson?
He did ride on the Ryerson. He worked on the Ryerson.
I was
He worked on every boat on the Inland Steel fleet.
yes, I had worked as a second mate on the Ryerson as relief second mate. So again, when I first started with the fleet in 1976, they had the LE block, EJ block, Phil D block.
Oh, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
The Wilfred Sykes, the Ryerson, and the Joseph L. Block. So I have sailed on all 6 of the boats that were in the fleet at that time, but I was only captain on the 2, the Wilfred Sykes and the Joseph L. Block.
All right, and then our last question comes from someone on one of our online viewers. Zeb, do you want to read the question?
Okay. From Gene Frank, they say, as a captain on a large ship and me being a recreational boater, I was curious to see what you had personally. Any special reason that with your experience selected a cruiser? What they say.
Because that was my desire. I had been on a lot of cruisers yachts. I really liked them. This particular one, we wanted diesels. We wanted twin diesels. We wanted the second cabin because Ray and I were going to do the Great Loop. That was post or pre-COVID. We were going to do the Great Loop where you go down to Florida through the river system and then back up the East Coast. We have since decided that's not that important. Number one, we went down to Fort Myers 2 years in a row to find a dock down there. They're gone. The docks that we were going to go to were gone. And also on the Mississippi, a lot of the fuel docks have closed. And there's just a lot going on that river that we really don't care to encounter. So we've kind of decided to stay on the Great Lakes. We like that idea on our boat. And it does have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, cocktails for 6, dinner for 4, sleeps 2.
Thank you for
So anyway, we just decided on that boat. And what it was, again, Ray and I, there is no accident that Ray and I are married or that we have our boat or anything like that. We were talking, I kept telling him about this Cruisers 3870 Express. It's a 2000. We do not have a new boat. And I kept telling him about this boat. I love this boat. I love the style. We went to see some friends at the dock in Escanaba. We were walking by and I went, Ray, that's the boat. That's the kind of boat we're looking for. And we just walked by, went and sat with these friends. And they said, are you still looking for that cruisers? And I said, yeah. She goes, why don't you buy Pam and Paul's? And I said, where? She goes, right there. And I went, is it for sale? Yeah, they just said they wanted to sell it. We owned it a week later. And I love the boat. It's old, but I love the boat. We've, you know, that boat, bring out another 1,000. Yeah, add 2 T's. He had to have all the latest. I stopped him at bow thruster. I did. I said, I'm sorry. I'm a Dave Ramsey fanatic. I don't do credit. So we stopped at bow thruster.
But let's see, the question was, what do I recommend for the recreation
So
boats?
why did you pick it? Chris?
Yeah, why
What do
was
you
the reasoning
recommend
for
now?
what you
What do
picked?
you recommend?
But,
You
for,
can say that as well, yep.
all I would recommend on all the rec boaters is don't cut in front of those lake freighters. Because it takes a long time for those things to stop.
The business is not on your side, exactly. All right.
And especially, okay,
Sailboats, really, you don't have right of way.
Well, they do in some
They
instances.
do in some instances, but face it, if they're in a narrow shipping channel, I mean, we even had it happen with the tour boats this summer where we had people go in front of us and we couldn't go anywhere and it gets tense. So,
If I jump in, there will be a boating safety class that starts here on March 6th in this room, put on by the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
I'm gonna tell you one more quick story about this summer when it comes to that kind of thing. One of the first weeks we were out, we took tour groups. So we had bus groups coming in and they were all on the boat. And I was doing the narration and it was really foggy. I mean, a fog bank came in, the Viking Octantis was going through for the first time that day. There was all kinds of tension in the whole river. And we went out and we were just approaching the locks and there was a freighter or ship coming out of it. Now we did not have AIS on our tour boats. And the Salty gave us the 5 blasts. And we thought it was for someone else because we knew where we were and he knew where he was and we weren't in danger at all. And he gave another 5 blasts. So I went out on the bow and I'm looking to see if there's a wreck boat or someone down there, you know, and there was no one. And we figured out it was just because he thought that we didn't see him. So I looked at all the people on the boat and I said, okay, 5 blasts means that, you know, there's danger, but there's no danger for us. It's okay. He just doesn't see us. And I said, don't worry. Your captain's been on the job here for 2 weeks. Then I told him the rest of the story. So thank you all again. I am so happy to have all of you here. It's so flattering to us that you guys brave this cold wind. And us in retirement, we're trying to figure out why we still stay where our face hurts.
Because
But
we love it.
2 weeks, we'll be in Hawaii. So thank you again. Thank you very much.
Major thank you to Peggy and Ray for coming out and them braving the cold winds. We have a few events coming up at York County Maritime Museum that I have to tell you about. One of them is we are starting a Sea Scout ship, and we're having an informational night about that on February 9th. So next Thursday in this room at 6 o'clock. So bring your teenagers ages 14 to 21 out for that and join us in March 1st. That's the next month, right? It is. The first Thursday in March for Matthew Priggy talking about mayhem on Milwaukee's waterways. Y'all have a great night. Be safe.
Okay, in April, there's someone in here that's an expert on Captain Dan Seedy, the Great Lakes pirate.
Oh, yeah.
We live in his house from Escanaba. No kidding. I bought his house 10 years ago.
Didn't know it.
Didn't know it.
This is for you guys.
So did you tear into the drywall, dig in the basement?
There is a little square cement pod.
We'll be able to visit.
Right, exactly. Please disregard our sonar. Look into your wall.